Excellent. So I would like to start by a warm welcome to the speakers and the audience. And we are very pleased to be organizing this webinar on architecture education and the role of the architect in the 21st century. And I think the topic is very familiar, and we have been talking about this over the past 100 years. And we hope to expand the discourse and really contribute to the agenda of 21st century architecture and in education and in practice. We have a distinguished group of speakers with great achievements and great writings, great expertise in all aspects of architecture education and pedagogy, and we are really privileged to have you all speaking in this webinar. We thought we would present few words about the work of the Commission and who we are and what we do. So basically, we're going to offer a quick glimpse of the Commission. We have a robust structure. The Commission is formed of membership from different countries around the world, representations from different countries around the world. It's in this cycle, the co-director of the commissions are Selma and myself. We have an advisor who is sending her apologies, Yana Revedin, and we have members and correspondents, and the membership, the total membership is more than 30. And basically a representation of about 25 countries. Our key vision is to act as a think tank for architecture education globally in terms of policy, proposing guidelines, proposing views and perspectives on architecture education and shaping its agenda. And we try as an aim, as an umbrella aim, to facilitate and promote excellence in architecture education through a number of activities, and try to really lead by example, by trying to show best practices. We have key strategic actions for this cycle, basically promoting dialogue, working closely with the UIA Secretariat in terms of trying to enhance our digital footprint and to promote architecture education globally. We aim also to establish strategic partnerships with important organizations, whether working directly on architecture education and practice, or on specific themes like health, heritage, and many others. We aim to engage with a number of people, stakeholders, professional organizations, regional organizations, and the like. And this seminar is basically one of the key activities that demonstrate a level of engagement. For this triennale of the UIA, we have a clear mandate from the UIA board, and that mandate includes conducting studies on architecture education, how things are taking place in different countries around the world in terms of systems, degrees. We discuss the evolution of the profession and the role of the architect, and the UIA has a professional practice commission. So we are supposed to liaise with the professional practice commission. One of our key aspects or activities is to define an appropriate education for the 21st century, to basically try to address the future challenges and the challenges that we have today. And the webinar is developed thematically and conceptually to address this point specifically. One of our key tasks is to review, but this time significant review of the UNESCO UIA Charter for Architecture Education. We have done a review in the past cycle, and we are asked to develop a comprehensive review, basically, to reflect recent developments and practice and challenges and sustainable development goals and many and the like. We also have an award for innovation in architecture education, and some of you were participating in the jury over the past 2 cycles, and we were also privileged to have you in these juries, which enhanced the process, the debate, and the outcome. For this webinar, we can see it as a representation of one of our key activities. That's number 1. And 2, one of a series. So this is the first one. This is the first seminar, but we have a series of seminars planned, or webinars planned, over the next 2 years. And we are hoping to have at least 4 of this scale, in addition, of course, to our meetings. As you have seen in the introduction of the webinar, the written introduction, basically we are trying to address 3 key areas: pedagogy, practice, and policy, and looking at educational contents, best practices, modes of delivery, all of these areas. And some of the presentations will be speaking to these issues. Practice in terms of what are the key roles and responsibilities that we need future architects to be able to undertake. In terms of policies, basically, how do we elevate and raise the profile of the profession and the image of the architect, especially that, and this is, of course, one of the UIA missions, especially that the role of the architect appears to be shrinking in the entire construction industry. So I'll stop here, and I'll give the talk to Selma to give us a few words on the webinar itself. Selma.
Apologies. Greetings again to everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ashraf. It is a pleasure to be working on this task. And thank you all for your contributions and kind of a team building exercise that we are hoping we are undertaking together. I will just resonate briefly with what Ashraf has mentioned in regard of the program and the ambition, and inform you that at the recent council meeting in Tunisia in May, this program was presented with some progress, and it was very well received and endorsed by the UIA Council. So the work of Education Commission really contributes to one and other UN Sustainable Development Goals, and this work with Practice Commission as well is important. We had some contacts with them. There is a lot of overlap in their program, which is being refined. So we look forward to develop these tasks. Mentioning Tunisia also, I was heartened to sort of meet colleagues there, including Palestinian colleagues. So that kind of brings into sharp focus our common concerns globally, which are somewhat overwhelming at times and difficult to kind of understand and see how our action within global levels can, be efficient and meaningful. But at the same time, we are mindful that we are privileged to have this opportunity to interact, exchange views. Technology enables us common language, common understanding, and continuity of working together. So I look forward to further developing this work. As you have seen, and I thank you again, all of you who have joined, and our audience who is with us today, we have assembled a very interesting group of speakers with unique profiles, very well representing all 5 regions divided into panels along this theme that we have set for the webinar. So the first panel is looking at new directions in education, role in bridging the pedagogy, practice and policies, response to global emergencies and disasters, strategic changes and need for them in architectural education and practice, new roles and tasks to enhance the well-being in the built environment through education and practice, and some interactions with new digital tools that are at hand. That is roughly the summary of our first panel. And then the second panel, maybe Ashraf will introduce again when we come to that. So the plan is that we now proceed with our group of speakers in this first session. We initially had a discussant in the end, but at a short notice he was not available. So we will manage after each presentation, which should take about 15 minutes. And I'll try to time you and warn you to be efficient so that we manage to hear everybody, and that we allow after each panel some reflection and some discussion if necessary, as necessary. The whole program is being recorded by the UIA. It will be uploaded on the YouTube later and so on. And we will be using the material to, develop our policy positions. But also the audience to this seminar, webinar, which is silent, is welcome to pose questions in the chat. We may or may not be able to respond and address anything today, but we will certainly take it into account while processing and examining this material as proceeds of the webinar. So I thank you once again for your enthusiastic and learned response to this. And I now invite our first speaker, Professor Oya Atalay Franck. Professor Oya Atalay Franck comes from Switzerland. She is an architect, architectural historian, and educator, with a prominent role as president of European Association of Architectural Educators, and Professor of Architecture and Dean and Managing Director of the School of Architecture, Design and Civil Engineering at Zurich University of Applied Sciences in Winterthur, Switzerland. So Oya, you're more than welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me first try to get my screen working. Are you able to see it?
Yes.
I just need to change into the full build models. There we go. Good afternoon. Despite all time differences and many miles between us, it is wonderful to be with you and talk to you today. Thank you very much, Ashraf and Selma, for introducing us and also making this webinar possible. Today, we face enormous critical developments in many contexts and at all scales, as well as accelerating changes of all kinds. The questions of climate change, sustainability, the loss of biodiversity, of democracies in danger, of migration and dislocation, as well as alienation, of disruptive new technologies, like artificial intelligence, are of primary concern. The pace of change shows no sign of slowing down, rather the opposite. It is speeding up. And more rapid change is naturally bringing along an intensification of conflicts and issues. Today, in my presentation, I would like to focus on two key issues that shape strongly the academic discourse in teaching and research currently, of being climate change and disruptive technologies. Climate change has been on the agenda of scientists, governments, and media around the globe for decades. But the inability and maybe lack of will of societies and politicians worldwide to adhere to the 2016 Paris Agreement in order to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which has now already been exceeded, puts us at or beyond the point of no return. We are living in the era of Anthropocene, the name proposed by some scientists of the age in which humans have become the most important factor influencing biological, geological, and atmospheric processes on Earth. We design and we build and we use land. Almost 2/3 of the world's population live today in urban areas, the ratio constantly rising, and the cities are responsible for more than 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Our sector, building and construction, has an immense impact on our ecosystem, our lives. Almost 2/3 of global carbon emission is produced by our sector. That includes not only the construction of the built infrastructure, but also its use. These numbers are impressive, no? And they are scary. They show that the building and construction sector is an important one for making improvements in sustainability. But there is the good news. We can raise the occasion and help bringing solutions to these problems. That's an impressive task. As educators and professionals...
Oh, yeah, sorry. Would you mind moving the slides? You are on the first cover page.
Oh, I'm already moving them.
We don't see anything on the screen.
Oh, that's not good. Then let me just
Yeah.
try to start again. I have no idea what happened because I was already moving.
Okay.
Let me try again.
Apologies. Oh, yeah, I should have.
Hold on. I'm sorry for this disruption. Okay, so let's give a try. Are you able to see again?
Yes, but it's not
The cover slide only.
Now?
Okay, yes.
So this was the number 2 tremendous challenges that we have. The 2 key issues that I'm going to talk about, and the Earth continuing to warm and its effects being so profound, and our global reports calling for accelerated decarbonization of building sector. So these were the 4 topics that I were talking about. Now we're already in the solution seeking. Well, as educators and professionals, taking our duties serious and trying to active contributing to expand our knowledge and tools to fight climate change. I think the RIBA climate guide for professionals and for broader community, as well as the extensive research on pedagogy and guidelines developed by scholars from Finland, Denmark, and UK are just 2 examples in finding solutions for these effects and overall help improve sustainability, of which you may be already quite familiar with. As teachers and researchers, administrators, professional practitioners, we must find solutions for society's biggest problems where the built infrastructure is concerned. Embrace the potentials of critical developments, develop further strategies and put them into action. Improve the health of the building ecosystem with good building practices, and help society not survive the existing crisis, but also to adapt, to help it become more resilient and to raise the living standards. As schools of architecture, we are also responsible for developing the best practices of pedagogies. We educate our students fit for professional workplace today and tomorrow. We do research needed for advancing our knowledge, technology, and for developing the discipline, its discourse, as well as develop effective solution strategies for professional practice. As well as we provide continuing education for the graduates and all professionals to keep up to date and very much actually important and central, most of all, to empower the next generations for their huge tasks in transforming the challenges into chances. So how to translate these goals into daily practice at an architecture school? The topics we are currently addressing in my school, but also in many others in Europe, in research and teaching, as well as in continuing education, are exploring many different modes of reuse in construction, thus improving circularity in architecture and building processes, working with hands-on practice and research-based data, but also through the lens of a building history and culture, developing climate-conscious design and research, teaching and practice, building with alternative materials, as well as developing the conventional ones further, for instance, working with new wood technologies. Also tackling the challenges, thinking radically from the early stages of design, how to reduce the energy consumption and CO2 emissions in building, developing new strategies in landscape and cityscape to approach to architecture with complete different lenses. These topics are extensively researched and are fully integrated in teaching, especially in the design studio. The questions are tackled further in form of research by design. The purpose is to develop also new methodologies and addressing the tasks, as it also happens in professional practice, in interdisciplinary groups. And our students are committed. They know that they are part of a new paradigm shift, and they are the agents of transformation. The topics they choose freely for their thesis work are impressive, and in their center of the search always is the aim to reach good architecture. The European Schools of Architecture get together annually, focusing on topics that oscillate between global and local. We have been addressing repeatedly as schools in the recent conferences, curriculum for climate agency, design in action, but also new ways of sufficiency. And you're very welcome to connect to us in Münster 2024, end of August. This brings me to the second topic, which impacts the schools and the practice, AI and digitization, where we are even more overwhelmed. The change and developments in the sector is extremely rapid as known and is highly specialized. What is new today is literally passé tomorrow. How to keep up with this pace? How will our current teaching methods adapt? Are we already passé? How will our craftsmanship be in a few years? And do we have as teachers the right competences and tools to implement what is necessary into our educational practices? Traditionally, architectural education depends a lot on analog methods, producing artifacts and in-person communication throughout the design, but also in the practice of construction processes. How do we teach what we teach in the future? How will AI change architectural practice? And how will AI constructively impact such fields that do not operate exclusively on problem-solving schemata? So how do we define the artificial but architectural intelligence in this age? Policies, this is the third P you have in the session and for this series. Policy to practice to pedagogy. Policies can help. Since 2021, new European Bauhaus initiative of EU Commission has been a catalyzer. It has been a catalyzer to forge alliances and collaborations, to make best practices visible, to develop interdisciplinary methodologies and skills. and to expand the implementing innovation through digitization to push forward sustainability for scarcity. This happens especially through extensive collaborative projects such as DigiNet, Circular Bio-Based Europe, or Craft Creating Actionable Futures, bringing multi-stakeholders together. Proud to say that the architecture schools have a central role in all these innovative projects. They are partners. I'm coming to two fundamental principles which I believe are ineradicate for future: designing the life cycle of buildings and educating the citizen architect. We need a new mindset. We need the mindset for architecture, landscape, urban planning, construction, and management. We have to focus on multidimensional design. We have to aim for buildings' entire life cycle. The goal must be the high building culture and the quality of life. Educating the citizen architect is also fundamental. We have to look for citizenship in education to form critical, informed, empathic, socially active individuals. The architectural education must be the field of critical process of inquiry, a vehicle to raise social awareness, a tool for collective imagination. And we have to focus on the challenges while creating conditions for students and educators to locally engage as active citizens in their communities. The future depends on interdisciplinary collaboration. We have to reach out, connect to other disciplines. We have to connect to other organizations of education, to professional practice, and to politicians. EAAE has been practicing this in several ways. EAAE, Architectural Research Centers Consortium, with its conferences biannually, depending on the hosting schools, competencies, but also really a lot of resources that also being given. For instance, 2022 International Conference in Florida on Resilient City Physical, Social, Economic Perspectives, or recently in May in Aarhus, Denmark, Architecture into the Unknown, also looking at new modes of production and business models, as well as the work together with American Collegiate Schools of Architecture, practice of teaching, teaching of practice, as mentioned before, educating the cosmopolitan architect, and upcoming conference 2025, Conflict Resolution in Canada, Halifax, but also with Architects Council of Europe, questioning and trying to find ways of upskilling education and practice coming together, or like this webinar with UIA. I think my conclusion is 2 words: new mindset. We have to connect, co-create, and change. The curricula, all this development has to be shared. We have to give a certain direction to upskilling, and here we have to join forces, the professional and also educational units. And we have to intensify cross-disciplinary research, interdisciplinary collaboration in all scales and in all projects possible. The value of architecture is manifold. Architecture has value. It is the opportunity to building art, building business, building safety, building technology, health, and building community. We have to integrate the competencies in joint endeavors. I think transformation has been there, is here, and many more will come. I'd like to finish with a motto of my school. This is a graffiti a student of ours had put on our wall. The school's administration had tried to wipe it up several times, but we are resilient. Never give up dreaming, but not to forget, for the dreams to come true, we need a plan and we have to act. I hope you can share this with me as well. Thank you very much. Selma? You're still mute.
Thank you very much. Apologies, technologies. Thank you very much, Oya. Very, very inspiring, uplifting conclusions and solutions proposed. Shall we now move? We'll have an opportunity to reflect on that. Shall we now move on to our next speaker? I note there was some correspondence, and I hope that that is sorted between Miyawati and few panelists who were not on the same link. But if that is the case, may I now invite Dr. Sumayah Al-Solaiman from Saudi Arabia, our region 2, who is Chief Executive of the Architecture and Design Commission at the Ministry of Culture. So Dr. Sumayah, if you can hear me, please take the floor.
So far, she didn't get the link yet somehow.
Okay.
Yeah. If we can move into the second speaker, the following speaker, and then.
Okay.
No. Okay.
She's here.
Okay.
Thank you very. Yeah, there were few of them. I've sent an email to Miyawati and I've sent a link, but it's in this panel, I realize, so maybe not everybody gets it. So hopefully that's resolved. Sumayah, yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. I will just start by sharing my screen. My screen. So, getting there, my apologies. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be among such an esteemed group of experts from around the world. And what I would like to share today is really the experience that we've had in Saudi Arabia. And I have the privilege of leading the Architecture and Design Commission, which is part of the Ministry of Culture. And what we have done quite recently is actually something that has tried to learn as much as possible from all the global lessons that have been shared with us from a lot of the partners that we have engaged throughout the work while we were preparing. And what we've constantly heard was, these are the mistakes that we made, try not to make them. And it was actually quite a privilege for us to be coming late to the game in a way, because that just meant that we were able to sidestep a lot of the issues that perhaps were coming up in other places. And the reason that I'm saying now that culture actually does have a role in bridging the architectural pedagogy and practice, architectural pedagogy, practice and policy, is that when we built the strategy of this organization, that we really looked at it as something that is very much connected, that is part of a bigger ecosystem, and that without looking at all of it in a more holistic and integrated way, that we would be having quite a lot of gaps that we did not want to generate or perhaps miss. Just looking for how to do the full screen. Just give me 1 second. Okay. So the Architecture and Design Commission is a commission that has only been established in 2020 under the Ministry of Culture, which has been established in 2018. And when it was looked at, it was more about what can we do to look at the cultural sectors. Yet when we define cultural sectors, we look at the expression, the creative expression of the different components under culture, and we looked at the definition through UNESCO's lens. And when it came to architecture and design, we felt that it was really important to also look at all the different disciplines that were part of it. So we look at it more from a spectrum perspective, rather than these isolated silos where each one needs to work on their own. Because there's a lot of synergies that we found, especially when we look at the built environment between architecture, landscape architecture, urban design and planning, interior design, but also we look at industrial design as well as graphic design. So we go from a spectrum of the city level all the way down to the messaging, where design and problem solving is a common language across all of them. Now, this is in terms of the sectors. However, when we looked at what do we need to do with that, are we looking at outcome, the product, or are we looking at the process and the components coming in? And that is really where we have a very holistic view, again, looking at the value chain of everything related to demand, supply. So we look at inputs when we're thinking about education. We look at the environment and the ecosystem when we look around policies and incentives. And we look at the outcome in terms of what are we trying to achieve in each one of them. So for us to be able to have this really ambitious, let's say, direction, we have our North Star. And because we're coming into a game quite late, so all of these sectors are already commercially established sectors, we said it's really important to start to push the boundaries of what currently exists, to really question where we are. And that's where we seek to support excellence, and that's quite important in the architecture and design ecosystem, shaped by our culture and reimagined by our ambitions. And these two components are quite important when it comes to how we think about us as not just importing designs, but rather being part of the production of it, and that expression that is very close to society and culture. And when we think about that, it's also definitely important to empower local talent, because we have had periods in the past where it was much more about importing, yet there was very little capacity building that was happening. And this is something we are working very hard to avoid this time around. Yet ultimately, we know that the architecture and design sector have such a profound impact on people's lives that whatever we do well will have an opportunity to improve people's lives, and that's at the national level. But also globally, we think that this will help really put Saudi Arabia on the map, to be at the forefront of the creative scene, to be part of the conversation and not just a bystander in that. And that's why when we started to think about what our objectives are, it was important to look at it again from a kind of a 360 view. So we look at sector development, and with that, we think about policy making, creating the right, let's say, policy tools that we need, the incentive systems that actually creates a conducive environment for better practice and education. But also we look at empowering the third sector. Because while we are a government entity, it's not about us just looking at what we are doing, but also we need all the different players to make sure that there's a balance of voices and that we do not assume this top-down role going forward. Now, also in terms of the economic impact, that's quite important to actually create a sustainable economic impact. So we look at the diversification of the economy through the creative industries on the one hand, but also really thinking about how do we create jobs in the different sectors that architecture and design can serve, rather than just within that same sector. Now, with talent, and this is quite an important one, we start very early. So for us, our earliest programs are K-12 programs, where we think of design as a life skill. And this is where we really want to create a design literacy that helps us then create more educated youth coming into universities, knowing what they will be expecting. Yet at university level, we then look at how we enhance that experience, whether it's through standards or educating the educators, or going beyond the curriculum to really expand the horizons of students within academia. And there's a lot of programs related to that that also end up with CPD programs. So this is where we look at how do we go from all the way from kindergarten to retirement, and making sure that we address the different needs of our stakeholders at every stage. Global recognition is where we really want to put Saudi Arabia on the map and provide opportunities for our stars to really have, the place to network and be in different global platforms. And with sustainability, and going back to maybe Oya's talk about the importance and really this pressing kind of crisis that we are in, where we want to make sustainable practice and also within education, this becomes the mainstream. So there's a full cultural shift that needs to happen, whether it's at the educational level, at practice, or even when it comes to localizing perhaps technologies, even with contractors and in the construction industry. So there's a lot that needs to happen, and that's why we've elevated sustainable practice really at the high, let's say, objective or strategic objective level, to really make sure that this is something that cuts across all the initiatives that we have. And finally, as our last objective, we have a community of innovation, and this is where we foster and promote research and innovation at various levels. So we look at the documentary aspect, we look at the innovative aspect that can be commercializable. So really making sure that research informs practice and education, and this becomes an integrated whole. Now, we have 6 programs under which there is a number of initiatives. We have 33 initiatives, actually, and I'll maybe just give a brief of a few of them and not all, because really this is where each of these initiatives seems like an IKEA flat pack in a way. Once you get it out of the box, you can never really put it back, and that's how our initiatives have evolved. So they start out with an ambitious scope, yet while we're developing under each, there's multiple projects, and I'll talk about a few of them in a bit. So perhaps for the interest of this seminar specifically, I'm going to highlight the ones in white. So we look at policy development, academic development under sector regulation. There's also areas of thought leadership and empowerment under sector development, and I'll touch upon these as well. For instance, with the King Salman Charter for Architecture and Urbanism, or urban transformation, for instance. With education and career, this is where we think of it as a continuous trajectory. So we think of internship and advisory programs, continuous professional development, also in, educational enrichment in various projects that we have. With content development, we look at research strategy that then also serves a number of other initiatives. Also, from an engagement point of view, we have a number of initiatives that really activate people and get them together in perhaps not an academic dry setting, but rather in something that brings them together in something more exciting, and that where they can see tangible outcomes quite soon. And then we also do our market research and our firm registration. So I'll give a few examples maybe of what we have, and I'll try to go through them as quickly as possible, leaving some time perhaps at the end. And do keep me on time, please, Selma. So these are just a few of the laws that we are looking at.
5 minutes.
Okay, yeah, perfect. So as Ashraf was saying at the beginning, when we look at, let's say, the diminishing role of the architect, we really need to look at it from a policy perspective, thinking about what can we do to support architects and architecture? So one thing that's happening in Saudi Arabia is that it's a very engineering-centric society. And for now, there is still the registration of the architects under the Council of Engineering. And we are currently changing that completely, where we're working on the transfer of mandate, and also the law to practice architecture and design, which then entails the executive rules, codes of ethics, but we're also working on the practice side when it comes to standardized contracts, or let's say even competition guidelines, where we think about best practices and what we might start to change, not just from a professional point of view, but also how do we educate clients or potential clients in general. From an academic development point of view, there's 2 major things, perhaps. On the one hand, we've seen that a lot of the universities, they don't cooperate, they don't share information. So what we now do, we are the safe space where universities share our data, their data with us. We anonymize that data, but then we share it back to the universities, and it helps them to measure themselves across the other universities in a broader sense rather than one-to-one. And this has been quite helpful in making sure that programs are able to also make a case for themselves with their higher leadership. Another point, which is the Academic Excellence Guide. While we're not an organization that accredits, we have produced an Excellence in Architecture and Design Education Guide, also with the help of Professor Ashraf Salama, where this is something that helps them think about this in a more cultural way, rather than a checklist that goes back to accreditation. And how do we create, let's say, this level of responsibility and accountability across all levels of academia when it comes to creating not just the standard, but really going beyond that. Our sector report is something that you can download from the QR code. Again, we looked at it quite comprehensively. Across 6 subsectors, we also looked at what's happening in business, what's happening as a sector outlook, what are the opportunities, education, research, community engagement, all these different things are really important. And for the first time, we made something that was, just anecdotal and very small into something that is now research that they can rely on when it comes to decision making. With urban transformation, we're looking at how do we educate municipalities and development authorities across the board, and how do we give them the tools to not just measure urban interventions or, let's say, urban designs that are currently in existence. How do we retrofit with participatory tools? And this is where we then have workshops. We help them then to create that kind of, so we empower and then we incentivize when it comes to sharing some of the best practices between them. Also with the King Salman Charter, this is our earliest initiative. This is part of our thought leadership when it comes to where do we really want to go? So we have a lot of commercially driven development, yet we said we wanted to go to something that is much more about value-driven architecture and urbanism, where we think about people and community, sustainability, innovation, and also how do we root our architectural and urban environments into our historical and geographical determinants. So this is where a lot of activity has already happened, and we will be having the award ceremony for that in early August for the first cycle of projects that we have now seen are, is that a one? Yeah, okay. So educational enrichment, again, we have quite a lot of things happening, forums, summer schools, training with giga projects, as you can see here. This is our last educators forum that we have organized, so quite well received and visited. We also have, with our research strategy, a number of programs that we're currently doing. Our first program is the conference that we had last March. And again, this is where we're bringing all the different stakeholders together, academics, practitioners, students, and industry partners. For children, we are working on a children's festival with a competition. We're translating books to create content. We're creating an educators forum for teachers at public schools. Designathon is an initiative where we bring 500 people together with a great pot of prize money, where we work on the let's say communities challenges related to sustainability, designing for good, designing for well-being, and so on. And then competitions are things that we have a great portfolio of, again, looking at different skills, but always taking people forward who win not just the prize money, but with other opportunities that accelerate their career. We have a number of international partnerships. We've applied to be the World Design Capital. We got to the shortlist. Unfortunately, Frankfurt got it, but that was an experience as well. That was quite good. But we work with international organizations when we have a lot of, let's say, representation across the board, making sure that we have a lot to show and say, and also in our events. And this is it, the last slide. Just wanted to say that this is the way we've been working. It's only been 4 years. And we're learning constantly, so happy to engage with any of the questions and discussions at the later stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sumayah, for this warm whirlwind and impressive presentation. Thank you very much. And maybe you can take off your slides from. So we now go back from region 5, we go back to region 2.
3, 2 or 3?
Andrii Markovskyi, isn't it?
Sorry. Yes, apologies.
Yes, so region 2. So Andrii Markovskyi joins us from Ukraine. He is the Doctor of Science of Architectural Sciences and Associate Professor at National Academy of Fine Arts and Architecture in Ukraine. So he's going to talk about his views on education in global disasters and what are the priorities. Andrii, the floor is yours. You're more than welcome.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Madame and Monsieur. It's a great honor for me to take part in this conference, and thank you for this opportunity. And I will speak a little bit about some perspective of architectural education in the condition of global disasters. And it's not like strict proclamation, it's more meeting for some discussion. And if we talk about disasters, about some challenges, now I'm sitting in the capital of Ukraine, in Kiev, and we have no light. But I prepared, I have a battery, my internet provider have a battery, and I believe that it will be enough. But if in one moment my picture will shut down, you know, but I believe that everything will be okay. And I want to talk about some perspectives in the time of global disasters. And on the beginning of 21st century, we have a lot of challenges for architecture and architectural education, which is the development of countries and urbanization were increasing foster to significant destruction. Some of them are natural. It's like some. Did you see my second slide?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Some of them, like you see, this picture is earthquake. It's earthquake in Turkey that had place last year. Some of them take place now. It's like a volcano eruption, like in Iceland, and some of them are man-made. I talk about some terroristic acts, some technogenic disasters, and of course about military aggression. It's Ukrainian city Mariupol after Russian attack in 2022. Before the war on this city, there was about half of million inhabitants. And unfortunately, now Ukraine is currently a very clear example of catastrophic destruction by full-scale war, unfortunately. And in case of condition of global challenges and existential threats, when not individual structures are destroyed, but hundreds, sometimes thousands of buildings, maybe full cities, agglomeration, or regions, the question arises, what exactly architectural education should focus on when we are preparing future specialists? Should we focus on preservation of historical heritage, reconstruction, and in the case of loss, reconstruction, or support of sustainable development? Yeah, or on contrary, focus on modern technologies and materials that will allow to quickly and qualifiedly create new comfortable housing units for people, minimize the number of forced refugees, create better conditions for them, and make it for lower financial cost, of course. Should architectural education train narrow profile specialists or generalists? We are faced in the fact that the classical academic architectural education in Ukraine, but I think not only in Ukraine, but all around the world, when we have classical architectural schools, not prepared for such large-scale challenges. And I think the problem is not unique, and it will be relevant for a lot of regions and a lot of countries. Such question is was discussed in a lot of conferences and panels and roundtables all around the world. Only in the last month, I take part in the panel on Cyprus for the World Heritage Day, devoted to the problem of preservation of cultural heritage in the face of disasters. In September, it will be a workshop with a similar topic in Sweden. Oh, sorry. However, architectural education does not have time to update itself in the specific condition. At the moment, in Ukraine, we're training in one hand classical narrow profile qualified restorers that are focused in the careful preservation, conservation, and restoration. On the other hand, we have a lot of civil architects and urban planners that are focused in the education and creation of new buildings and development of new settlements. Meanwhile, in the global nature of destruction, forces us to reconsider the classical approach. In this condition, where whole cities could be destroyed in a short period of time, a few days or few months, there is a question of rapid recovery. And European architecture, of course, had a similar problem after World War I and World War II, especially. There was proposed several strategies. In the most Western Europe countries, there was a dominant international style of this modernist approach after destruction of World War II. In this strategy, when some piece of city was totally destroyed, it was replaced by something new, by something modern at that time, cheap and technological buildings. It's like housing units of Le Corbusier in Marseille, the similar project in Berlin, and etc., etc. In some cases, the most vulnerable examples of historical buildings were reconstructed, like medieval center of Warsaw. However, it's not happened often in condition of complete destruction in Europe. In former Soviet Union, in the first after-war period, they decided to choose a different way. If some city center was totally destroyed, they was rebuilt in the spirit of Soviet neoclassical architecture, so-called Stalin's empire. It was a modern construction at that time, in the middle of 20th century, not mass functional, but unique and expensive. It was a new building, not a reconstruction. Such example made it possible to create expressive and unique ensembles of city center decorated by a lot of sculpture and monuments that were significantly superior in quality than typical modernist buildings. However, this approach was the least people-orientated because government spent all resources to these ensembles, to the city center when millions of people lose everything. This was not for people, this was like an act of monumental propaganda. In the end, I want to say that at the end of this part of speech, the issue of recovery of significant disasters was not clearly resolved then in the middle of 20th century. And now in the beginning of 21st century, we again see global challenges. On the example of the destroyed by the war cities of south and east of Ukraine, a large number of professional questions arise. If the historic centers would be reconstructed by architect restorators, and if it will be made by them, how much time and resources will it take? After all, restoration methods are really detailed and significantly balanced work, and it's taking a lot of time and a lot of resource. On the other hand, should we or should not to restore the original industrial city centers and buildings that was made in the end of 19th and the first half of 20th centuries? Because a lot of cities there was a quite new, and of course it's couldn't be compared with some medieval castles or 1,000-year-old cathedrals that also was built in Ukraine. However, for these habitants who lived in these industrial cities, this architecture, this example, could be part of their local cultural identity, of their history. And could we ask them, did they want to rebuild it or not? And who could decide it? The government, some professional architects, or the inhabitants of these cities, some local organization, or etc., etc. Or, on the contrary, should we rebuild these settlements using advanced modern architecture, make them more comfortable, more inclusive, ecological, logistically accessible, etc.? Already in this stage, we are faced with a conflict in the professional sphere, because the education of architects restoration in one hand and civil architects in other hand potentially provokes them to take two polar different positions on this discussion. Actually, Ukrainian, and I think not only Ukrainian architectural education suffer from a significant lack of architects precisely for such crisis phenomena of the global catastrophes. Specialists who could take into account various factors and be able to solve relevant problems. Should we restore historical format landscape? If so, what should we do with the people who lost their homes? Make them wait 10, 20, maybe 30 years before a resource will be found? Or should we build some temporary modular housing in weeks? Or make something a long time, but qualified houses, but it will take some years? Could we lose the historical heritage and originality of this region for this? Could we spend limited resources for conservation cultural heritage or improving the living condition for people just right now? This question, in my opinion, don't have and will not have right answer that could be determined one and for all. However, we can educate appropriate specialists who will be able to find a specific solution for each of the specific crisis situation. I think this is all.
Thank you very much. You were quick. I was just going to say you have more, 5 minutes more, but thank you very much, Andrii. And thank you for, launching out the very important, first of all, showing resilience and, to determination to be constructive. And also you pose very important questions, what to do with the canons, what's the rapid recovery, and who makes the decision? And obviously, compliments to your colleagues that you are at least talking about that and trying to find answers.
Thank you very much.
We might have.
I try to make it not like a statement, but like a discussion. And if some of my colleagues have some question or some thoughts about it, I'm pleased to speak with them.
Thank you very much. I think it resonates with many. So we are gaining a little bit of time because you had saved. It is my pleasure now to invite Thomas Fisher from the United States, from Region 3. He is an architectural professor and the director of the University of Minnesota's Design Center in the USA, and also former dean of the College of Design and former editorial director of Progressive Architecture magazine. So, Thomas, you are very welcome. Please take on the floor.
Great. Thank you, Selma. Let me share my screen here and start the slideshow. I would like to talk about sort of an emerging area of opportunity for the architectural community, which is to think of ourselves as strategic systems and service designers. So I will want to make the case that we have long had a tradition in our field, understandably, of focusing on the design of physical and objects and environments, and basically on the goods producing side of the global economy. Even in the sort of tradition of the Bauhaus, where there are many architecturally trained people who will design furniture, who will design cities, all of the work that we've really focused on as the outcome of our way of working and way of thinking has been on the creation of physical things. However, the economy has a dramatic need for our skills on the services side. If you just look in this chart in terms of the size in the United States of consumer spending, the services side of our economy is about double that of the goods producing side. And I want to make the argument that the services side of the economy is just as designed as the goods side, and often very poorly designed because the architecture and design community has not focused on that. We have not sort of thought about the design of systems and services as being something that we do. And I want to make a case that this is the future of our field, that we will continue to design physical spaces and objects, but we will, I think, emerge as well as a a profession that is focused on service design. We need to do this not only because it's an economic opportunity, but it is also a professional responsibility. As we think about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, for example, we might think that the only one that really relates to us might be goal number 11, which actually talks about sustainable cities and buildings. However, I would argue that all 17 involve design, and that the architectural community has something to offer every one of these goals. And so as we begin to think about what our global responsibilities are, we as a profession need to expand the outcomes of our work. And we're beginning to already see this as there are many who are critical of other fields using the word architect. However, I think instead of resisting that, we need to understand what the world is asking of us, which is that they're asking us to come up with solutions to the major problems that face the world. And we have a lot to offer in that area. And I think as we begin to think of ourselves, not just in terms of the design of buildings and of physical environments, but also finding solutions to the world's problems, I think we will find that the demand for our students and the demand for our skills is enormous, far outstripping what is now the case. And I think for architectural education, this also requires that we begin to think about the way in which we focus and much on the process as on the end product. Some of you are probably aware of the design thinking processes that IDEO, for example, has promulgated. And these are, of course, the same sort of steps that we take when we design buildings in terms of doing research, defining the problem, generating ideas, building models, doing drawings, constructing them, and evaluating them. And so a lot of these are methods that we're already familiar with. And I think we're finding that it is applicable to a wide range of needs. So what I thought I would do would be to talk about some of the work that we're doing in our center. And ours is a research center in an architecture school. And most of us are architects by training. And so this is a new way to think about how we apply our knowledge. And what we've learned in doing this work is that there are certain kinds of characteristics that apply not only to design of buildings, but also to the design of systems and services. One is the idea of looking for abundances. Where are there opportunities that you can build on in working with communities, working around services? And this is, we have found a process that taps into people's own creativity, where we view the people we work with as co-designers in these processes, giving voices to those who often are not heard. And the idea of being able to prototype and to look for possible disruption. So for example, we've been working with people who are experiencing homelessness in the United States and seeing them as our clients and engaging them in a design process. This is an example of one of our client teams here, where we came up with a new form of housing that was sort of intentional communities. And we not only designed the buildings, but I think more significantly, we realized that in the United States, the healthcare system was quite interested in the issues of the challenges of people experiencing homelessness. And we actually have redesigned some of the healthcare reimbursement policies in the federal government here in the US based on working with these communities. And so again, this is an example where we're not only designing a physical thing, in this case housing, but we're redesigning the systems that enable that housing to happen. It's also about building on the assets of communities and really, and again, engaging the very people who are part of the system. So it's recognizing there are many different forms of capital. There's not just money, there's also human capital, natural capital. It's accepting the wisdom of crowds. It's being open to the ideas of people who might not be designers, but often have diverse perspectives. And it's working both bottom up and top down. And one of the things we've realized that is a value that we have to offer is that many people recognize that we as a field are very good at paradigm shifting, at developing new ideas, asking kind of fundamental questions about why things are the way they are. We do a lot of work in communities where we build on their assets. These are often communities that are struggling with depopulation or housing issues. This is an example of a community that along the Mississippi River in the middle of the United States that needed to attract new population. And so we worked with them in terms of the natural landscape that would attract new people. We actually worked with our Army Corps of Engineers who dredged the Mississippi River and had them essentially show how they could put that dredge material to create a new park and a new set of opportunities for new housing in this community. So again, this work is frequently sort of straddles sort of the redesigning the system, in this case of how the Army Corps of Engineers handles their dredge material, and physical design, in this case, an urban design strategy for this town. A lot of this involves what we call relational curiosity, really looking at the kind of self-organizing ways in which the engagement of individuals and communities can create new kinds of systems and services. As many of us know, working in the design of buildings, the solution often lies at a scale different from that of the problem, and that solutions are very situational and culturally specific. And these are characteristics that others who are not from the design field don't often understand. There are many people in the business community, for example, who are calling themselves service designers, but they have never really been trained as designers. And so they often don't understand the kind of nuanced way in which design works. We, for example, have been working with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, teaching some of the world's best public health physicians how to use design as a way to respond more creatively to global disease. This is an example of some of the workshops that we've been leading in this area, where they recognize that to solve some of the major problems, they need to be more innovative and to think literally outside the box in terms of how to address global problems. This is a very action-oriented way of working. We tend not to use the word design thinking because this is not about thinking, it's about doing. And a lot of what we find ourselves doing is doing to think. In other words, just as we work as architects, we do drawings, we build models in order to understand a problem. We do the same when we're doing this service design work. We're learning quickly from failures, as we do in any design process. We recognize contextual differences, thinking both fast and slow. Working both at the specific level and at the abstract, generalizable level, and paying attention to scale differences. This is another issue that we find many other fields don't understand, that, that there are many problems that exist at a wide range of scales, and this ability that we have as architects to move across scales is really helpful in doing this work. So, for example, we were asked by our state government here in Minnesota to redesign our adult foster care system, where we put together diverse teams that had never been in the room together to talk about this system that they were all a part of. And out of that process came a whole series of innovative solutions, many of them related to the built environment, because these are people who are living in group homes, who have cognitive disabilities, of one sort or another, and yet a lot of their solutions are very simple and very cost effective. And so one of the things we've been finding is that governments are recognizing the value of our way of working that can actually save money and produce better results at the same time. And this also, I think, requires of us a kind of what we call methodological agility. It really is about a form of improvisation in dealing with these so-called wicked problems. where we really listen to people and their stories. And these, of course, are the things that every good architect does, which is to listen to your clients. Our view is that our field needs to view all 8 billion people on this planet as our clients, and recognizing that we and everybody are part of systems, many of which are incredibly dysfunctional in terms of the impact they're having on human well-being, on climate change, and that we believe that this is some of the most important work that needs to be done in this century. And we feel that we have the skills to do so. Here's another example of a project we did, which was the justice system came to us to say, how do we reduce the evictions of people from their housing? And what we did is we diagrammed their process. They had never ever seen a diagram of how their process works. So simply visualization of these systems is itself a transformative activity, the kinds of things we regularly do as architects. And in working with people who have in fact faced eviction, we redesigned the system so that there were a number of ways in which we could be preventing this problem, slowing processes down, speeding up other processes, providing information sources and what have you. And so the end result of this work is our diagrams, such as the one you see here. It's really using our visualization and diagramming abilities to show people that these systems are in fact designed products, and that we as architects have a lot to offer in doing this. So I'll end by just simply saying that there is an enormous demand for this. So for those of us in architecture who feel that people don't appreciate us, that the market for our skills is declining, is not true at all. There is just such a need for our work in this area of the service side of the global economy. And if we get to a point where we can teach our students how to think and work in these ways without being so wedded to a single outcome, which is the design of a building, we will find that our students have more opportunities than they could ever imagine. So with that, I will stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. That is very uplifting, and I love the, the buzzwords about, solution architect, break the boundaries, and vary between skills. So skills transferability and adaptability, paradigm shifts. That is all really that the profession and education needs to embrace, and with confidence. And thank you for giving us that confidence and examples of very varied applications of that type of approach. So on that, let us move now to another region. We go down south to Australia. Lindy Osbourne Burton is our next speaker. She is an accomplished architect, educator, and researcher, and interested in advancing the profession of architecture. She is also an associate professor of architecture at Queensland University of Technology. So Lindy, please, the floor is yours. And I think we still have somebody's screen. I'm not sure. Is this Lindy trying to enter or?
Yeah.
Yes, it's mine.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much for that wonderful and very warm introduction. Okay, so that's a really hard act to follow, I have to say. We've had some really incredible presentations so far, and I've been really inspired, and I think my brain is buzzing. It's 10:30 at night here in Brisbane, Australia. So I'm a bit tired and my brain is buzzing from all the presentations. But just in the interest of just trying to contextualize where we're at the moment, we've had Oya talking about the importance of adaptation to climate change and I guess the emergence of AI and what that means. We've had Sumayah talking about the importance of culture and embedding that. Andrii then chatting to us about global disasters and obviously something that's deeply personal that you're going through at the moment. So thank you for that presentation. and Thomas really advocating for the amazing future of our profession. So thank you for that in terms of where we're at the moment. Now, what I'm going to be speaking to you about is an emerging area of design education, and it's really embedded in design for health, and I argue in inclusive design. And similar to the work that Thomas was talking about, the work that I'm going to be speaking to you about is also embedded in a research centre that I'm heavily involved in, which is the Thrive Research Centre. We're a nationally funded research centre funded by the Australian Research Council, and our partners exist worldwide, and we're actually situated at QUT, which is Queensland University of Technology in Brisbane. And I'm situated within that research centre as an associate director and I guess the voice of architecture. And within Thrive, our focus is really on trying to understand how we can modify building management systems to better control indoor air quality. So that's the focus of the work that I'm going to be presenting to you this morning, depending on where you are. So I want you to start with just imagining a future where really every indoor breath that we take within buildings promote health and inclusivity. And I argue that to realize this, we must revolutionize architectural education globally. As educators, we need to equip tomorrow's architects to create environments that prioritize occupant health and well-being, and not just focus on aesthetics and form, which, if you're like me, I'm sure is what all you ever see in your design studios from your students. So when we think about indoor environmental quality, and especially thinking about air quality, it's really often overlooked in our curricula and in our focus. And I argue that the air that we breathe profoundly affects our health and our quality of life, and that we really must teach our students to be mindful of vulnerable people, and particularly those who live with chronic health conditions. So while, at least in Australia, outdoor air is fairly heavily regulated, indoor air remains largely unmonitored. And I believe that this gap in our teaching really requires and demands urgent attention. So my question to you is, how can we design buildings that can help us to thrive? How can we challenge our students to rethink architectural design by putting health at the forefront? Our future curriculum must balance energy efficiency with occupant well-being. And natural and hybrid ventilation really should be core components of our teaching. I argue that we should inspire our students to blur the lines between indoor and outdoor environments, drawing lessons from vernacular architecture, and particularly lessons from areas within the global south, which I think are very often overlooked in our curriculum, certainly in Australia. So historical perspectives can really offer some very valuable insights. So for example, the Pantheon's oculus, it's not just an architectural feature, it really is a vibrant lesson in natural light and ventilation. So by studying such examples, we can help our students to understand early applications of air circulation principles. And these age-old concepts remain highly relevant today and in contemporary architectural education. Now, I also asked you to consider the Fijian tulu. Now, these are traditional Chinese structures which house up to 800 people. And they are masterclasses in sustainable, well-ventilated design. By incorporating such case studies, we can show students how courtyard design facilitates efficient natural ventilation. It's about learning from the past to design for the future. So while historical examples are obviously very valuable, we do have to teach how architectural solutions for air quality have actually evolved and where we're situated currently. Our curriculum needs to bridge those ancient wisdoms with our knowledge of contemporary technologies. I encourage you to encourage our students to innovate and draw inspiration from both the old and the new. So currently, most buildings in developed areas, and particularly in areas like Australia, where I'm presenting from, we treat air merely as a control medium by adding outdoor air only really just to meet the minimum requirements that are regulated by legislation. And I really believe that we've got to challenge our future architects to design for true health and comfort, emphasizing that a building's success is not just about its appearance, but more so about how it functions for those who occupy it and live and use within the buildings. So when teaching about ventilation, we really must stress its role in infection control, and particularly coming out of the pandemic, which I think is something that is still, hopefully still in the front of mind of everyone that's in the Zoom call today. Natural ventilation offers cost-effective solutions, but we know that also that it comes with challenges in contemporary infrastructure. The solution is not simply about opening a window. Our students need to balance their ideals and around designing for energy efficiency with concerns about health, and especially in our post-pandemic world. I'm of the view that we've gone so far in terms of concerns about energy efficiency that it's actually at odds with and has become detrimental to the health of building occupants. So it's important to not forget the work and the legacy that was left behind by Florence Nightingale. 165 years ago, she was advocating for ventilation to reduce cross-infection. Now, she wasn't an architect, she was a nurse. And her emphasis on fresh air still remains relevant to this day, and her work is still published and referenced. So by including such perspectives, and I dare say, thinking of multidisciplinary perspectives, we can inspire students to pioneer health-focused design, rather than focusing only on the views and opinions that come from architects. So Nightingale's work was really quite profound in that she provided specific ventilation recommendations. And we should encourage this level of detail in our students, teaching them to be proactive in improving indoor air quality, just as they are when it comes to considering spatial requirements or aesthetic considerations or arguments about building form or context. Now, Nightingale's solutions for cold and boisterous weather demonstrate crucial adaptability. I think it's important that we prepare students to design for various climates and cultures, but always prioritizing occupant health. The future of architecture lies in this flexible, health-focused thinking. We often associate air pollution with outdoor spaces. At least I am speaking on behalf of the Australian cohort. But indoor air quality is equally as important. We know that indoor air can be more than twice as polluted as outdoor air. With people spending a lot more time indoors, we must train students to consider air quality as fundamental to design and not something that is added on as an afterthought. Now, this slide contains a few statistics that actually show the implications of indoor air quality in Australia. And some of them are pretty shocking, and I really think are part of our advocacy of why we need to stand up and respond to this. Now, our future and emerging architects also need to understand the potential indoor air pollutants and their impacts. And these range from VOCs to viruses. You'll see on the slide, I've named just a few. But they're all design considerations. And we should be teaching about sick building syndrome and its prevention through health-focused design. Our students must grasp how their designs directly impact people's health and their well-being. Now, despite the UIA declaring 2022 as the year of design for health, which, by the way, I was absolutely delighted that they did, many architectural curricula have been really slow to adapt. And I would argue as well, practice has been slow to adapt as well. And I believe that we must ask why and how we can actually change this. our education must be more responsive to global health concerns and not in a tokenistic way. So the UIA's initiative focused on designs that protect, develop, and restore health, acknowledging the interconnectedness of human, animal, and environmental health. This approach should be absolutely central to our teaching and training architects to create spaces that actively contribute to holistic health. Australia's National Construction Code has specific ventilation requirements, but these intersect with safety regulations which limit window openings. We need to teach students to question and to go beyond minimum standards, finding innovative ways to maximize ventilation while maintaining safety. The future of architecture, I believe, lies in this sort of creative problem solving. So why is it that we just continue to design buildings that are like fully sealed eskies or chili bins or ice coolers or whatever they're called in your part of the world? Australia's National Construction Code effectively encourages this in order to comply with the energy regulations that are in place. And I believe that we should encourage students to challenge regulations, to seek inspiration in unexpected spaces, and to propose innovative solutions. The future of architectural education lies in creative cross-disciplinary thinking. So how can we make invisible disabilities visible in our designs? Air quality significantly impacts people with chronic health conditions. Carbon dioxide levels can indicate infection risk, and tomorrow's architects must understand the relationship between ventilation, carbon dioxide levels, and health risks. We need to broaden our students' understanding of inclusive design. By monitoring indoor air quality, this should be key in architectural design. Carbon dioxide levels can indicate air cleanliness and ventilation needs. Higher carbon dioxide levels increase infection risks, and we also know that they can dramatically affect cognition. So these issues, which have been heightened in our thinking since 2020, are still not widely recognized, exposing gaps in our approach to diversity and inclusion. We must teach students to integrate air quality monitoring into their designs. Improving indoor air quality boosts health, productivity, and sustainability. We need to show students how good air quality design leads to multiple benefits. Tomorrow's architects should be able to argue a clear business case for healthier buildings, particularly when discussing this with their clients. It's crucial that we use available tools to make indoor spaces safer, healthier, and more accessible to all. So since 2020, organizations like Australia's new Safer Air Project, which has been led by the formidable Plum Stone, are advocating for safe and inclusive indoor spaces. Accessibility and inclusion should be absolutely central to architectural education. By creating safe and healthy indoor environments is fundamental to our notions of inclusive design. The future of architecture lies in this holistic approach to accessibility. And it's really ironic that while we have legal requirements for physical accessibility and outdoor air quality in Australia, we lack similar legislation for monitoring indoor air quality in public spaces. We should encourage students to question these gaps and advocate for comprehensive health and safety standards in building design. So I'll put the question to you, what if buildings could breathe? Biomimicry offers exciting possibilities for living buildings that can self-ventilate and cool. The termite extended organism provides a model to move beyond biomimicry to truly alive buildings. We should introduce these concepts, encouraging students to look to nature for sustainable solutions. And also understanding things like how our lungs work can provide valuable insights for building ventilation. We should encourage our students to think of buildings as living, breathing entities. This interdisciplinary thinking is crucial for the future of architectural education. There are also striking parallels that exist between how our skin regulates temperature and how our clothing and building envelopes can also do so. So by encouraging students to think of buildings as extensions of the human beings that exist within them, This holistic thinking will help them to design truly human-centered spaces and environments. Council House 2 in Australia exemplifies sustainable design innovation and practice. Similarly, the Startup Lines campus in Kenya shows how buildings can respond to their environment through local community collaboration and considering the local climate, materials, and cultural context. The Las Tejedoras, and apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly, Center in Ecuador demonstrates how traditional techniques can be combined with contemporary design practice. These case studies can show students what's possible when you bridge the past and the present and challenge the status quo. By integrating local climate, contextual, and cultural knowledges, while simultaneously enhancing ventilation strategies to improve indoor air quality, we can empower the next generation to design truly inclusive spaces. We must expand our understanding of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging to encompass health and well-being. This comprehensive approach to human-centered design will elevate architecture's contribution to tackling global 21st century challenges. So finally, I just want to thank you so much for your attention. As we move forward, I really want to challenge you to commit to breathing new life into architectural education by prioritizing health, well-being, and inclusivity the front of our teaching, so that we can transform not just our profession, but the built environment and society as large. The architects we train today will shape the world of tomorrow. Let's ensure that they're equipped to create a healthier, more inclusive future for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lindsay, with that breath of fresh air and ventilation, but also the messages of learning from vernacular, looking how we strike a balance between technologies and lessons of passive strategies that are there and that are perhaps more suitable to different climates. So, and I couldn't agree more with the call to, embrace the health and well-being as an ultimate goal of any educational and practical approach. Thank you very much for that. We are going to our next speaker and staying in Region 5. So the next speaker is Jolanda de Villiers, Dr. Jolanda de Villiers Morkel. She is a registered professional architect and also a head of instructional design at Stadio Higher Education, I believe in Cape Peninsula University of Technology. So Jolanda, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome. Greetings from a sunny Cape Town to everyone present. Just a correction, I'm currently at Stadio Higher Education. I moved from CPUT where I taught for 20 years. So I'm really, really happy and privileged to be a part of this esteemed panel. I've been blown away by the amazing inputs and thought-provoking presentations. And I want to thank Ashraf and Salma, as well as the UIA team, for putting this amazing program together, for organizing this special event today. I really look forward to sharing some of my ideas and questions with you, and during or following this event to hear your feedback and ideas. Firstly, I want to share with you some acknowledgements, which you can see on the screen, of the AI tools that I used in the preparation of this presentation, including DALL-E, GPT-4o, PowerPoint Designer, and Grammarly. In the 2022 paper titled Defying a Legacy or an Evolving Process, a Post-Pandemic Architectural Design Pedagogy, Salama and Burton challenged the legacy model of architectural education. With reference to the COVID-19 pandemic, they argue that the notion of a stable state, which was first described by Shen, is no longer applicable in today's dynamic and rapidly changing world. The release of OpenAI's ChatGPT 3.5, less than a year after the publication of this important work, highlights the need that they identified for re-evaluating the learning process, curriculum structures, design studio practices, etc. So artificial intelligence or AI technologies are categorized by their capacity to mimic human characteristics, the technology used, their real-world applications, and the theory of mind. That is the ability to understand and predict human behavior. The three stages of AI as depicted here are artificial narrow intelligence, that is ANI, artificial general intelligence or AGI, and artificial superintelligence or ASI. Now, ChatGPT, a large language model that generates text, images, and videos based on user requests and drawing on large data sets, falls within this first one, the ANI. This model is very effective in its narrow domain, but it cannot operate outside of predefined tasks. Recent developments suggest that we are fast approaching AGI, where a computer will be capable of performing any intellectual task that a human can, using previous experiences and learning to solve new problems. I dropped a red pin on the slide, roughly where we currently find ourselves on this timeline. Some predict that AGI could be achieved by 2029, which is pretty soon, while others believe it may already be here. ASI is a hypothetical stage that would exceed human intelligence in all aspects, including creativity and problem solving, leading to significant advancements as well as ethical and existential concerns. So, to envision and shape potential futures, we can turn to speculative thinking approaches used in human-computer interaction. Now, this method explores imaginative possibilities, potential outcomes, and alternative futures. It's been used to understand the impact of new technologies, prompt discussions about the future, and inspire innovative ideas. Now, looking back, we can see three evolutionary stages or waves from 1970 onwards. The current stage, known as the third wave, focuses on exploring relationships between humans, institutions, and technology. Techniques like speculative design and discursive design use imagination and fiction to expand ideas of what the future could look like. Following the speculative futures methodology in this exploration, I broadly employed three stages, namely research and trend analysis, narrative creation, and reflective and iteration. In the research and trend analysis stage, I collected the latest published research and online shares made by people in my social network. I then employed ChatGPT, I should say GPT-4o, in conversation to create plausible narratives, illustrated by DALL-E, and which then led me to reflect and identify gaps that will inform the next iteration. The REBA AI report published at the end of February this year highlights the impact of recent AI developments in architectural practice and the profession in the UK. The report contains the findings of a survey conducted with over 500 REBA members, almost half of whom responded that they already use AI on some projects. Of course, these in turn, almost half believe that it improved the efficiency of their design processes. Notably, AI's major applications in the profession currently focus on mainly two aspects. I was surprised not to see visualization. Perhaps I missed it in the report, but these are achieving efficiencies in admin-based tasks and limiting the environmental impact of projects. Along the same lines as the REBA report, which highlights both the potential benefits and risks of AI on architectural practice, Harvard professor Neil Leach describes the impact of AI on architectural education as both incredible and terrifying. This dichotomy arises largely because we have no clear vision of what the future holds or how quickly it will arrive. Like architectural practice, higher education, a profession equally traditional and firmly rooted in established practices, is being challenged by AI. The rise of AI technologies is prompting a re-evaluation of conventional teaching methods and the role of educators, pushing institutions to adapt to a rapidly changing educational landscape, and in doing so, aiming to shape AI as a force for good. Now, shortly after the release of ChatGPT 3.5 in November 2022, Professor Daniel Köhler of the architecture program at University of Texas at Austin wrote a very bold piece titled Studying Architecture After AI. He argues that architects will need to find new ways to contribute to the profession, similar to what we've heard earlier today. He argues that these new sets of skills are required, those that can be used in conjunction with AI agents. According to Köhler, these AI agents or bots can also play a significant role in the education of architects by providing personalized support to students and a diverse body of students, meeting them to their own needs, thereby expanding the role of the human design tutor. When AI enhances human capabilities instead of competing with them, it creates what we call a cyborg or cybernetic organism. Imagine the implications for architecture education, where human tutors often struggle to properly engage with all their students, given the worsening staff-to-student ratios due to increasing student numbers and dwindling resources. To help me imagine the change invited by Salama and Burton, I prompted GPT-4o. As it should, the prompt that you can see on the screen contains three things: a role, a clear goal, and instructions. The role of the AI in this case is a futurist. The goal is to use speculative futures to reimagine educating architects in an AGI-dominated age. The instructions are to write 3 short stories or narratives, each for a South African architecture student, trained to respectively conceptualize, communicate, and implement innovative and sustainable built environments, designs for those at least. After each narrative, I asked DALL-E to give me a super realistic image of the student based on the narrative that GPT-4o provided. So the first narrative, presented by GPT-4o, describes Tabu in Cape Town. Those of you who know Cape Town will recognize Table Mountain in the background. Tabu is using augmented reality glasses, guided through immersive simulations by an AGI tutor. In the design process, Tabu collaborates with global peers in virtual studios, refining his idea through AI-generated insights and real-time data. The second narrative introduces Naledi, presenting her project to a global audience using a fully interactive holographic presentation. She too has an AGI assistant. Using AI-enhanced language processing, Naledi seamlessly switches between languages to address her diverse audience. The third and final narrative presents Sipu on a construction site equipped with AI-powered exoskeletons and an AGI assistant that monitors the progress, predicts potential problems, and optimizes the use of resources on the site. Next, based on the narratives, I asked DALL-E to give me an image of what their studio looks like. The accompanying description that you can see on the screen there reads, "Here is an image depicting a highly futuristic architecture studio. The space features advanced technology like VR and AR tools, AI-powered software, cutting-edge 3D printed facilities, holographic displays, floating digital interfaces, and interactive touchscreens. Students are actively engaged in hands-on activities, building models with robotic arms, and collaborating on physical projects in an ultra-modern environment with sustainable design elements." This was the first iteration. Reflecting on the trends and narratives, I noticed that for each of the 3 architecture students, Tabu, Naledi, and Sipu, GPT-4 included an AGI assistant to help them conceptualize, communicate, and implement. Interestingly, these assistants were not present in the visualization of the studio space itself. Yet there's a steadily growing body of research focusing on AI assistants, also referred to as AI agents, virtual tutors, tutor bots, etc. Some authors argue that students value their availability, patience, and lack of perceived judgment. Now, moving from a stable state may well include the integration of multimodal AIs as design partners in Cyborg studios. More research is needed to explore how exactly we might train these agents. If not through prompting, then through fine-tuning. For this, to quote Michael Webb, we need lots and lots of examples of good design tutor practices. So that is the challenge. So let's get started. I thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate your time, and especially this time at the end of almost at the end of the session. You're really welcome to reach me at any point if you have any comments or suggestions. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Jolanda, for bringing us into this speculative future. I'm stunned. Difficult to ask a question. One thought came to my mind. We are going to have AI tutors. Are we going towards AI students, virtual students as well? You know, the fundamental questions is, what are humans for? What economies and what education is appropriate for humans, and why? But you're not asked to answer. Thank you very much. That was fantastic, and also you brought a test or sort of little experiment to share with us, so we might give us food for further thought about cyborgs. I realize we have taken, possibly my own commentary has taken a little bit of time, more than we anticipated for our discussions and discussants. So Ashraf, I don't know what you think, but first of all, I would like to thank all of you. You were fantastic. I've taken a lot of notes, but perhaps first to agree on what do we do. We are a bit, we've exceeded a bit of time, and we planned to have a bit of a break between two sessions. So Ashraf, would you care to maybe make any comment, or do you want me to?
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Salma, for leading this session, and thank you really for all the speakers. Despite that, I have been working on architecture education for the past probably more than 30 years, 30-something years. There's a lot of new things happening and a lot of new ideas, and just want to pick on some of the issues that were raised in the presentations. I took some notes, but I'm not gonna really use them all. The issue of citizenship, for example, raised by Oya, and the role of architecture schools, role of professional organizations, and how can we expand the tools and approaches. So that's one issue, or one focus area. The idea also of the new European Bauhaus, and really trying to use the Bauhaus as a name, as a very important school of architecture and other design fields, to capture some of the challenges and how we react to them. That's really very important at a policy level, at a European level, is really important. I think the role of culture and cultural institutions, as shown by Sumayah, is really excellent, and the level of depth in some of the activities undertaken by the Architecture Design Commission in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia is really impressive. What is more impressive is not just the content, it's about the process, engaging everybody in this entire process, dealing with universities who are not initially willing to share information and to share sufficient data about their processes, their practices. Bringing everybody together is really very impressive, and I've seen that personally a couple of months ago. The Andrii, basically his question is very, very critical and raises important concerns about the role of architecture education and whether do we really need to design new buildings? That's an important question in specific contexts. And basically, the idea of generalist versus specialist is also important. From the perspective of the UIA, there is always emphasis on the generalist education, not specialist education or generalist architects. But the challenges and working with this massive or scale of challenges require rethinking really the architecture education and the role of the architect in these particular contexts. I should say I have been citing and quoting Tom Fisher for ages. Okay, no, that was really over the past 20 years, and his work is really very impressive and his writing very, very influential. For those of you who don't know his work, but and I think his work currently aligns with many of the statements he was really trying to shape the agenda of professional practice and architecture education. And I recall very well in the scheme of things, which is one of his books, trying to advocate certain parameters about the ethics of the profession and how ethics can shape architecture education and professional practice. Lindy, a colleague, and we've been communicating, working together for a while, and I think the idea of health and going in depth in issues related to indoor ventilation versus outdoor ventilation and how that should be seen as part of the design parameters or parameters required for successful design is really important. The issue of inclusivity is definitely a challenge for the future and one of the challenges. So thank you very much for this. I should refer to a couple of concepts that also Tom referred to, which is about relational curiosity and methodological agility. These are two very important ones, and actually I'm willing to explore these as we progress with our work. Jolanda, I should say, very impressive, excellent. And personally, I've never thought about AI and AI contribution. So you're using it in the most positive and constructive sense. And it reminds me, really, I still refer to the work of William Mitchell in the 90s. I think he mentioned Cyborg also, and I think 95, Utopia, Electronic Utopia. What is really important is that your arguments and experiments are not about meeting the future. It's like you're bringing the future. You're not meeting it, you're bringing it now, which is really interesting and important. I personally learned a lot, and I'm sure the audience would have learned a lot from the interventions, the presentations, and the arguments. I was hoping there is more time for reflection, but probably this could lead to a collective piece that we can hopefully be able, or we are able to generate as an outcome of this session and the next session. So thank you very much, everyone. Excellent contributions, and I'm very pleased and overwhelmed with the ideas and with the practices, and also with the simple thinking or simple approaches that you adopt to generate this kind of work. So thank you very much.